One sentence a constituent said to me when I was out door knocking about a month ago was, "This government aren't governing anymore, they're marketing." And I think that is exactly the problem that we have. So we have a record debt, nearly $11 billion, the worst budget in the history of Tasmania, and that's on the back of the previous two budgets. Well, this is actually even worse. We didn't think it could get worse. We thought the one from 3 years ago was bad enough, and then we had another record deficit, and now we have this one, and it really is the worst budget ever passed in the history of Tasmania, ever put up by a government in the history of Tasmania. I look forward to estimates next week, where I'll be prosecuting the abysmal budget situation of the corrections portfolio. We've hit 62% recidivism within 2 years, and we'll soon hit the $200,000 per prisoner per year mark, the most expensive in the country with the highest recidivism. No northern prison, a piecemeal allocation to investigate a northern remand centre. A veterans portfolio without any real funding for veteran services, just bureaucracy and PR grants. A women's portfolio without any real funding, nice glossy brochure and some grants programs, that's it. And the DPFEM allocation with a massive $35 million budget cut. And a minister who, after years of trialling a wellbeing roster, has made the decision to return to an antiquated 20 to 30-year-old Ottawa rostering system. A minister more than happy to stand with police officers and get his front page spreads with media releases, but is not happy to actually stand with them and stick up for them when it comes to their wellbeing. Retention issues and a massive workers' comp rate of 16% with burnout and officers wanting to perform their duties, but no support from this government. Now, I have members from the Police Association here today, and they're here because I have a series of statements which have been provided to me to read into the Hansard from police officers. And what these statements describe is what the wellbeing rosters meant to them, and them trying to find a work-life balance, and what bringing in the Ottawa rosters, or bringing back the rosters, the old antiquated Ottawa systems, will mean for them. And I'm going to read these out, Speaker. So this is told from the perspective of a father of young children. The last run of 7 nights I did in November 2024 meant I ended up having a total of 23.5 hours sleep over the entire week. I was required to attend court on multiple occasions during the 7 nights. I always felt that I was at work and not present in my family's life. When I was home, I was asleep, grumpy, angry, or not mentally present. On one occasion, I don't even remember driving my eldest to school, which was a key factor in leaving 24/7 uniform work. The relief of transferring out are palpable, and it has been the best decisions I've made in a long time. Told from the perspective of a mother of young children, Speaker. Considerable lack of sleep. Days where I am awake until 5 p.m. with the children and back at work at 11 p.m. Many days where I would only get 3 or 4 hours sleep, then have to get up with the kids again, parenting all day and work again that evening. The simple lack of family time, my partner, also a police officer, would be doing the same. The lack of being able to build a strong relationship with our children because we are always working. There is a lack of support for each other during tough and sick times due to work. Missing out on family events, including my partner's own child's baby shower, Christmas, birthdays and big holidays. The lack of being able to attend to parenting and family responsibilities during 7 nights can lead to issues in relationships. Speaker, told from the perspective of a police couple. Working the old Ottawa with a partner also working it, which is not unusual in this profession, we would only get 1 day off together every 5 weeks. Speaker, told from the perspective of a mother of young children. I have worked Ottawa for over 5 years before doing the 6x6 roster for approximately 2 years. Ottawa not only impacted my physical health, it impacted my mental health. Not having a forward-facing roster, days, arvo and nights make it impossible for my body and mental health to recover. Leading into 7 nights, I was expected to work 4-day shifts, 1 day off and then 7 nights. During this period, it made it impossible to see my family, exercise and lead a healthy lifestyle. It was normal during night shifts to lose 3 kilograms due to stress and a lack of healthy lifestyle. Now I am a new mum to a beautiful daughter, going back to an outdated and unhealthy roster. Ottawa isn't only going to affect my physical health, it's going to stop me from seeing my daughter and having crucial family time. Working Ottawa roster significantly impacts the opportunities for maintaining a positive work-life balance and being present during important life events. This roster doesn't only affect me doing it, it will also affect the community, Speaker. Being so sleep deprived makes it near impossible to make safe and sound decisions while in a stressful and dangerous environment. Ottawa will also impact the response time for police to respond to emergencies, as there will be less officers working at the one time. An Ottawa roster is not conducive to women in policing who are now encouraged to simultaneously start a family while focusing on their careers. Speaker, told from the perspective of a single mum. Single mum of 2 teenage kids who need to be present when I have them week on, week off. 7 nights would mean that I would only be able to get around 5 hours of poor quality sleep per day, as I'm responsible for their welfare, etc. This is manageable on 2 nights, not on 7. Speaker, told from the perspective of a former police officer with PTSD. As a former police officer, recover and readjust. As police officers on that roster, we were barely surviving ourselves, let alone performing our duties to the best of our abilities. It is an antiquated roster, extremely family unfriendly, unhealthy and dangerous. It has seen the rest of the police services in Australia move to a far more healthier roster that provides more flexibility and family friendly, allowing members to catch up on sleep. Why our current Police Commissioner would consider reverting back to this roster again, despite all evidence contrary to the well-being of its members, speaks volumes about the care for its people. Speaker, told from the perspective of a police father, I fell asleep on the last night of Ottawa. I worked before we changed. Partner was also already asleep. The only reason I didn't total my divvy van and the parked cars on Devines Road was because the crash alarms went off and woke me up. I didn't work Ottawa with my kids. Now I have 2. I remember how irritable I was on nights, not to mention totally zombified by night 7. It does take 1 day to recover from nights like 6 by 6, multiple days wasted trying to return to normal. My wife will essentially be a single parent for that whole week. It's not just the 7-night shifts though. Combined with the days over the weekend leading up to it, fatigue fortnight. 6 by 6 is so good that I can work my 6 on, work an OT shift or 2 on days off and still come back fully rested and ready to go. Speaker, told from the perspective of a career police officer. One big thing is the fatigue of the 7 nights and being called into court and being made to sit there with all the criminals while you're trying your hardest to stay awake. Having to drive yourself in there and home again puts us all in a dangerous situation. The fatigue from that roster is causing us to have slower decision making because we are tired. It's busier out there now and you're having to make decisions quick and on the go. Being tired from being on that many night shifts will make this hard. Speaker, told from the perspective of a career police officer. I worked the previous 6 by 6 trial at Glenorchy. Again, it was met with overwhelming positivity and a return to Ottawa was strongly opposed. When our son was born 4 years ago, we were struggling with his sleeping habits. I had 7 nights coming up, which were going to be impossible for my wife to get through alone while I slept through the day. My shift had 9 people rostered to work that week, so I requested unplanned leave to take care of my family. There was already too high a number of people on leave for the entire station for me to have leave approved. I was forced to get a medical certificate and use sick leave. Speaker, told from the perspective of an early career constable. I always wanted to be a police officer growing up. I was so proud to finally become one. I always intended to spend my foreseeable future as a police officer. I wanted to be a career cop. I graduated to Launceston, in which I worked the 4-on, 4-off roster, to which a large majority loved. We moved to Ottawa and my enthusiasm for the job faded. Ottawa is debilitating, it's exhausting. To work a roster in which your department has spent millions of dollars in research to find it is detrimental to the health and well-being to its workers, and then being placed on that roster after knowing this feels so backwards. I know that my career as a police officer at this rate is not viable. I will be looking for another job if we continue to work on a roster that is known to take years off your life, to a job that we get kicked, punched, spat on, assaulted, seeing things that give you nightmares, Speaker. We are doing too much for too little. Family life is tough. I consider myself lucky that I do not have children because I know that if I did, I would not see them. There is no incentive to be a police officer in Tasmania. I am proud to stand amongst my brothers and sisters at work as we are doing too much for too little. It is time we are recognised. Ottawa feels like a way to save money. We are not a business. We are a resource that the vulnerable depend on. We cannot look after our community if we cannot look after ourselves. Speaker, told from the perspective of a mid-career constable. I'm a police officer and have been for over 5 years, and I have done the Ottawa roster and it nearly killed me. Approximately 3 years ago, I was driving home from shift after night shift. I hadn't done overtime, so the hours were not an issue. However, I was exhausted and delusional from doing 7 night shifts in a row. Whilst driving home from work, I was driving along the highway when I hallucinated seeing a large bush on the road. Instinctively, I swerved to avoid the bush that I thought I saw, causing me to nearly crash into the side barrier. I then continued on, slightly shaken, and approximately 10 minutes later, I hallucinated again, thinking I saw a human on the road. At this time, I slammed on my brakes, thinking I was about to hit a person. I immediately knew I was not fit to drive and pulled over and waited for my partner to pick me up. Another occurrence in the middle of my block of night shifts, I believe 3 or 4, I was driving around conducting patrols and doing curfew checks. However, whilst driving, my colleague fell asleep in the passenger seat, and I unfortunately did too. I drove off the road, fortunately woken by the noise of the sidelines and the gravel hitting the wheels. Had there not been a road shoulder, I would have crashed. These are both close calls and certainly not the only occasions. However, the story could have been very different. I am afraid of going back to this roster that it may kill police officers and resignations will skyrocket, causing more stress. I can't risk my mental health and physical health deteriorating again. I know as soon as it starts, which it will with this roster, I will resign. Since the 6 and 6 rosters have been in place, I have seen my family again many times. I have a great sleep schedule. My mental health has never been better, and I feel like I have a life outside of work. I have not once hallucinated or fell asleep behind the wheel at work or after work. This 6 and 6 roster is revolutionary and needs to be kept. Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to share with the House on the adjournment tonight some statements which have been provided to me by some of our hard-working Tasmanian police officers, and they're in relation to the rostering system, and they provide evidence to their support of the wellbeing roster system as opposed to the antiquated Ottawa system which they are being forced into returning to due to budget cuts. And a lot of these statements, what I appreciate the confidence and the faith and the trust that Tasmanian police officers are putting to us here this evening, because it takes a lot for police officers to show their vulnerabilities and express just exactly what the rostering means to them on a personal level. And I think it's really important as decision makers and lawmakers, we and people that we send out to deal with the hardest things in our community, we need to be prepared to listen to them. We need to be prepared to fund the wellbeing rosters. Now, this comes told from the perspective of a career police officer. For much of this year, my partner has been working interstate. Under the 4x4 roster, we were able to still coordinate spending time together either at home or interstate. Under the new Ottawa roster, it has been extremely difficult to spend any time together, resulting in us often going weeks or months without being able to spend any amount of time together. The shift structure and lack of overlaps in the Ottawa system is simply not suited to high-tempo modern policing activities. Members are almost always required to work continuation of duty overtime. This is due to having to attend response jobs shortly before changeover, or due to having to complete reports they were unable to do during shift due to the volume of response work. Shifts regularly extend beyond the rostered hours, and the only certainty has been that you likely won't finish on time. Despite working shorter shifts, it is becoming possible to plan activities after work. I find with the overtime and volume of work we are required to do, 2 days is simply not enough time to decompress or reset. I am far more fatigued and stressed under the Ottawa roster than I was working an alternate roster. During a 1-month survey period of the Ottawa roster, I calculated I was required to work in excess of 30 hours overtime. Under other rosters, much of the overtime being undertaken was voluntary, and members had a much greater ability to self-manage. The working pattern under Ottawa is physically and mentally draining. This has led me to seek support from a psychologist who, in one session, described the roster and environment as a burnout factory. That's pretty compelling. Now, this is told from the perspective of an early career constable. I graduated as a constable within the last 2 years. I worked the four on and 4 off roster for approximately 5 months. This included the outstations component I did as a trainee. I loved this roster. Being a new constable is one of the most overwhelming jobs I've ever had. We are taught from a young age to crawl, walk, run. Being a police constable, you start by running and are sometimes requested to fly. The cognitive strain this puts on you is enormous. As well as responding to critical incidents, I found the run of 4 days off allowed me to reset and deal with what I had just experienced. The incidents included suicides, family violence matters, sudden deaths and dangerous arrests. My wife informed me that I was so much happier in this new career, and she enjoyed having me home for the sustained period. This all changed when Ottawa came in. We started with training days, then a run of 4 afternoon shifts. Afternoon shifts are always busy and everyone was exhausted. We are meant to finish at 12 p.m, but that rarely happens due to catching up on paperwork. You get home, go to bed, then wake up late in the morning. Your 2 days off turns into 1.5. My wife and I had our first daughter in 2024. This is when I really noticed a decline in my love for the job and mental health. I felt I was never home, and when I was, I couldn't switch off. The 2 days off in a row isn't enough to rest. When I work the run of 7 nights, my wife really struggles as she feels she needs to leave the house for a week so I can sleep. Then I'm left with the guilt of knowing I can't support her. I knew joining the job I would need to do shift work, but the 4 on 4 off roster made it worthwhile. The support is not there and the workforce feels it strongly. Thank you.